Hey guys, and welcome back to my kitchen. So today is Chase's birthday. He's turning the big 1-3. And most of my kids don't actually like cake on their birthday. They usually go for something totally different like cheesecake or whatnot. Chase has asked for a lemon meringue pie. And so I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to show you guys my grandmother's pie crust recipe. So this is her recipe, but of course I'm adding a little twist to it because Grammy always used Crisco. That was like her jam. And I don't use Crisco, I use lard. So this is Grammy's recipe, but with lard instead of Crisco. So this is traditionally a recipe for a double pie crust. So like for your apple pies or whatnot, where you have the top crust. So I'm cutting it in half. So just know that the recipe down below I'll put for a double pie crust, but in this video we're just doing a half because obviously lemon meringue has a meringue top and not the pie crust top. So the very first thing that we are going to need is 1.3 cups of flour. Now I'm using all-purpose flour. Pastry flour actually is very nice in this as well. It adds a very light texture to it. But I'm not going to do that today. Now we also need a teaspoon, well, the original recipe is a teaspoon of salt. Since this is half a recipe, I'm just going to give a generous pinch. So about 1/2 teaspoon is good. You definitely want the salt in your crust recipe because that counterbalances the sweet of whatever filling you're putting in. So you just kind of, I always use my hands too. There's no reason for a fork or a spoon or anything when you're doing this. I just use my hands. And then we're doing the lard. So this is lard that I rendered, helped my uncle render, and it is beautiful and snow white, as you can see. Now to get in the jars, I actually like the little icing spatula. I feel like it really helps to get along the edge. And this is cold, so of course it's gonna be a little stiff. I think in the old days they used to use lard for just about everything, and especially, you know, back in medieval times and all that. Before there was such a thing as Crisco, lard is what they used. Then everybody, you know, loved the convenience of Crisco, and so they made the switch. But the thing is, Crisco is made out of, you know, assorted vegetable oils. It's just not that good for you. But lard is good for you. We need animal fats in our diets. And so this is, I know it looks like I'm on the struggle bus, but this is actually the easiest way I found to do it. But anyways, lard is really, really good for you. Again, I just kind of use my hands to kind of push this down in because when lard is cold, it is like cement. It's hard to work with. This recipe always calls for cold. So when you're making a pie crust and you want it to be nice and flaky, the trick is to have everything as cold as possible. So that's why we're not letting this come to room temperature to make my life easier. I want that flaky pie crust. So cold lard and cold water. Okay, that's about right. Okay, now I got to get it out of here. This will be a lot easier than getting it out of the jar though. So 1/2 cup of lard. Now, if you don't have lard, use butter. Butter works just fine. Actual butter, not margarine. It won't bake the same. And for many of the same reasons I don't like Crisco, I don't like margarine either. If that's all you got, I guess go with it, but butter is what you'd want to replace this with. All right, now that I've made a complete mess, now we are going to, again, you could use a pastry cutter or whatever. I like to use my hands. I'm a very tactile person, so we're just gonna get in here and start mixing the flour into the Crisco, and you want it so it's all kind of evenly distributed. Grammy always said it would be like pea sizes. I think it's more sandy, really. It works in pretty good. You don't want it to be completely blended in all together because then, you know, that's not going to give you the flaky crust results that you want. You want a little bit of chunks because that's where all the flaky goodness is. You gonna come say hi since it's your birthday?
Yeah.
He's charging his phone. He's thinking he's gonna be sneaky and not say hello. Come say hi, birthday boy. Yep. You're 13 today?
Yep.
You gonna do anything fun or just eat?
Both.
Both. The cool thing about my kids is we ask them if they want to go out to eat or whatever, or I'll make them anything they want at home, and every single one of them just wants me to make food from home. I think they don't really, every time we go out to eat, they just don't love it. We don't, it's not the same as a home cooked meal, I think. And I also think it's pretty cool that they choose things other than cake. Honestly, I like cake, it's fine, but I'm not a huge cake fan. I'd much rather have a really great pie or a cheesecake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting this pretty worked in. It doesn't take long to get it worked in. And I do have some bigger chunks and some sandy chunks, so I'll show you what it looks like as best as I can here.
Remind me.
All right. So, whoop, there's what it's gonna look like, okay? Now, I'm not even gonna bother cleaning my hands. I have some cold water here, and you just kind of wanna make a well in the middle of your flour. And you're just gonna add a little bit. So it's usually just a few spoonfuls is what you need. But I don't really measure it because the humidity in your house, the humidity outside, it can all be a factor. So there's not really any set amount. You just add little bit by little bit. And I do mean a little bit by a little bit because you can always add more. You can't take it out once you've added too much. I mean, you can add extra flour, but that of course is going to change the texture and consistency of your crust. So you don't really want to do that unless you absolutely have to. And what I'm just doing is kind of raking it around with my fingers. I don't want to work this dough. If you work pie crust dough, you will make it tough. So just kind of rake it around and it's all going to come together. You're just basically stimulating the effect of a mixer, just kind of pushing it around in a circle. And once you notice most of the crumbs are gone, that's about all the water.
I think I messed up with Team, but I don't want to go outside again.
Well, that's okay. Maybe Harley will grab it while she's out there.
There's a board out there.
It is a little chilly today, but at least it's not as chilly as it was yesterday.
I can wait for walking around.
Okay. Once most of the crumbs are kind of absorbed into this glob, you can start to work it together and see if it'll come into a ball. And that's what you really want. And that looks like a pretty good consistency. You want it to be soft, not too hard. You don't want it to be sticky though either. The sticky would be too wet. So it's kind of a right in between. Real nice and soft without being sticky. And it's picking up all the crumbs off the bottom. And that's what you got, okay? So, now that we have that, you could absolutely flatten it down a little bit and wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator and chill it if you wanted to. That's gonna give you an even, flakier crust. Also, if you wanna make something ahead, that way you don't have to do it later. You just kind of flatten it down like so, put it in plastic wrap, and away you go. But I'm baking right now, so we're gonna go ahead and roll this right out. Move my coffee cup out of the way, water. Again, I keep my flour right here. It's always handy. Lightly flour the surface. I always like to flour the top too, because it is gonna soak up some of that. Flip it over. The old handy rolling pin. And we're just gonna gently start applying pressure. Work from the middle, push out. From the middle, push out. Make sure you go in all directions and you want it to evenly roll out. And I go about halfway as to the size that I think I'm gonna need. And then I pick it up before it gets too thin and I kind of get all the flour back. And then we're gonna roll it out the rest of the way. Let me see if I can tilt you guys down so you can see a little better. Hold on one second. Okay, I think you guys are able to see a little better now. Okay, so just working from the middle, working our way out. You want to make sure you don't have any thick spots. And you'd be amazed. I mean, pie crusts are very easy to make, but you would be surprised how many times I have people say that they've never made a good pie crust. And I think everybody can make a good pie crust. And it's just one of those things that once you get a feel for it, it's the easiest thing in the world. But you just have to practice and don't give up. Just because you make one that might not be very good doesn't mean you won't be able to make them ever. So here I just have my Pyrex pie dish. And the way I like to get it in there is just kind of fold it in half and fold it again. Move your pie crust, your pie pan over. Your pie crust should be the consistency that you can pick it up without it tearing or falling apart. And then I just kind of open it up, put it right in, flip it over. And now I go about and I just kind of push it down into the pie dish so that it's all good and in there. Up to the corners. You don't really want air pockets. I usually just use my finger like this and kind of just push it down. That works perfect. Now I'll show you how I like to crimp the edges. Before I crimp the edges, I do need to get a knife. Hold on one sec. I always think I have everything until I don't. All right, this is, I love these little paring knives. They're the little cheapies. I get this at Layman's. It just reminds me of the old-fashioned antique paring knives that were in all of my grandparents' kitchens. It used to be in pretty colors of beige and blue or green and yellow. But anyways, I'm just cutting a little bit of this excess off, and I will actually show you a bonus recipe of what we do with this extra crust. I'm not going to have a whole lot because this is a single crust, but I will have some. It'll be just enough to make the kids super happy. I'm letting it overhang a little bit, but not excessive. Okay, that should be good. So just so you can see how it's not even completely, but it's overhanging maybe half an inch, quarter to a half an inch. And then we're just going to fold it under for right now. Just fold it under the whole way around. Now, some people like to cut off all the extra. I always enjoy having a nice piece of crust because that's one of my favorite parts. So this is why I do it this way. Just gently fold it under. I think the whole thing with pie crust is being gentle. Don't try to force it to do anything. I have absolutely added more water to a pie crust to make it softer. I've added more flour. You just don't want to overwork it. That's the biggest tip I have. Okay, so we have it all folded under like that. Now you could use a fork if you wanted to, but this is how I crimp my pie crust, okay? I take my finger and my other two fingers like this, okay? And you're gonna put your two fingers here and you're gonna take your index finger and you're just gonna push around. Let me see if I can zoom you in so that you can see what I'm doing better. I'm gonna go for a ride. Okay, here. There we go. Okay. I know. Let me see. Maybe that'll be better. Okay. So let's see. So I already did this one. You just put your thumb into the little crease that I already made. See, I'm gonna put my thumb here and I'm gonna put my other finger over here. Just kind of like a, you know, just like as a measurement. And then I'm just going to, let me turn it around. Take my index finger and just lay it in there. Kind of pinch these two fingers around it. And that's gonna give you, so put your thumb here, finger here, pinch it. Thumb here, finger here, pinch it. And that's gonna give you that signature look, that ruffled crust look. And we're just gonna work our way right around, kind of lifting up with these and pinching in. Till you come the whole way around. And that's it. That's your pie crust. Okay, now that we have our pie crust ready, I can get the filling ready and put it in here. I'm gonna make a lemon meringue pie. I've never made this recipe before, so I'm not gonna bother sharing it just yet until I've tested it to make sure that it is super yummy. But right now I'm just gonna set that aside, and I'm going to show you what I like to do with my extra crust. Now, I don't have, like I said, I don't have a whole lot because I just made a single crust and I used a big pie dish. So there's not a whole lot of excess left over. But, just kind of clean that up. You take your extra pie crust that you cut off and you kind of get it back into a little bit of a ball. And you put it back down on a floured surface. At this point, you don't have to over flour it because you've already floured it a couple times. And we're just gonna roll it out, not so much into a circle this time. This time I'm gonna try for more of a rectangle. Oops. This is something that was a treat every time my Grammy baked a pie. I like to make it real thin when I do this so I could get the biggest bang for my buck. And come over here and grab the butter. Do I have a butter knife over here? I got it. I just spread the butter right onto the crust, liberally. You don't have to go super thin with it. I like a good bit of butter, but not, you know, we're not going crazy. We're not putting it so thick you can't see the crust underneath it either. But a good topping of butter on there. Okay. And I have some cinnamon right here. Hopefully the cinnamon won't be too difficult to open this time. I don't know why these little containers get difficult to open.
Oh no.
Here we go. I'm not a weak person. I'm really not. But these little, these little jars. Okay, so we're just going to lightly sprinkle. Or heavily sprinkle, how much you like cinnamon. It depends, that's all up to you. But I like to coat it well, but not too thick. You don't want a bunch of chunks or anything on there. Okay. And I got the little sugar container. Probably have to fill that up. We keep the cinnamon and the sugar at the coffee stand because I like to add cinnamon in our coffees, and Cody likes to put some sugar in his. You're just gonna lightly cover it, light layers. Don't go crazy with it. And then you're just gonna ever so carefully start rolling the crust back on itself. And if you're like me, you probably didn't add enough flour, so it's gonna wanna stick, but you just gently work it. These don't have to be perfect to be enjoyable. Go. It is small, huh, Chase? Usually they're a lot bigger and a lot thicker. Oh, I lost some of my filling. That's okay. And you're just gonna kind of pinch the end so that the goodies don't all come out. And that's just about it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna add a couple little vent holes on the top. when I bake the pie, I'm gonna put this onto a cookie sheet and I'm gonna put it in the oven at the same time and I'm gonna bake it. You have to just keep an eye on it because it'll brown up, it'll cook faster, so you don't want it in there for the entire time that the pie's in there. And when we come back, I will show you the finished pie and the finished, we call these cinnamon rolls. They're not really cinnamon rolls, but they are. So I'll show you all that when we come back. Okay, I'm back. So I forgot, when I'm making a lemon meringue pie, you have to pre-bake or blind bake your pie crust. So I'm gonna show you the best way to do that. So I just cut a piece of parchment paper, a little bit bigger than the actual pie crust, and I'm just gonna kind of fold it like this so that it sits nicely inside the pie crust. Or at least a little nicer. When you blind bake a pie crust, if you don't weight it down, it will bubble up. And then you won't have room for your filling. So you get your parchment paper kind of down in there. Of course, it's not weighted yet. And I always have a jar of dry beans laying around. These ones I grew last year. And you're just gonna dump them in there enough to weigh down the parchment paper. So, like so. If I tilt it, all the beans are gonna go, okay? But just like that. So you wanna make sure that it's holding down the pie crust. You can use marbles, but I think beans are always just the best way because, you know, they're food too. They're food grade and you don't have to worry about it. Then you could just put your beans back in your jar and put them back on your shelf. So now I'm gonna go ahead and bake this. You're gonna bake, when you blind bake it, you just bake it until it turns golden brown and it's nice and flaky looking and you know it's done. And then I will put the lemon meringue filling in there and bake it. And then I'll show it to you when it's all done. All right, we're back. So I had just sprinkled a little bit of the cinnamon and sugar that fell off when I was rolling this up onto the top of it. This is the little cinnamon roll. Harley, Chase, you guys, what's that cinnamon roll?
Please.
You know better than to ask, so. Here, you guys want one with all the filling, right? Here you go. It's already cooled down. The crust is extra flaky. Let me show you guys what it looks like on the inside. See how good it looks? And it's just super flaky and the kids love it.
It's good as always.
Good as always?
Yep.
The crust yummy? Can't go wrong with that crust. It's a classic.
So good.
So I just cut that up for later and I'll set it aside and they'll all come and take some of it as they want. All right. Now, I also wanted to show you the pie crust because it's done. I just pulled it out of the oven. I took the beans out of it. So there's your pie crust. Your pie crust. There's your pie crust. You see how nice and flat it is on the bottom? If you didn't put the beans or some sort of weight in there, it would have just all bubbled up and you'd have no room for your filling. So that's the pie crust. I'll leave the recipe in the comments down below. Let me know if you make it. Let me know if you love it. I bet you will. Until next time, guys. Bye.